Hi, everyone, and welcome to All Things Breastfeeding. I'm Barbara Robertson. I'm your host for this podcast. I am the owner of Lactal Learning and associated with the Breastfeeding Center of Ann Arbor. And I'm joined here today with my co-founder of Lactal Learning, Nancy Moorbacher. Hello, Nancy.
Good morning, Barbara. Great to see you.
Good to see you. And so today we are going to be talking about our experience that we had recently at the ILCA conference, their annual international conference. It was held very fortunately near you in Sarasota, Florida. It was in Tampa. And
Mhm.
so we decided it was a great opportunity for us to go up and exhibit. So, what was special about this year's ILCA conference?
Well, the International Lactation Consultant Association is celebrating its 40th anniversary.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's about remembering the past and forging the future.
And right, because our profession is still pretty young. It's only 40 years old. And tell us a little bit about the history. How did, an IBCLC come to be? Where did that come from?
Well, originally it was La Leche League International, which is the peer support organization that decided there was a need for professionals in the field, was definitely true. I mean,
Yeah.
at the time there were no experts in breastfeeding, in hospitals, in doctors' offices, anywhere.
Mhm.
Basically, La Leche League was it. So they decided to fund the development of the International Board of Lactation Consultant Examiners, which is the organization that gives the exam to become an international board certified lactation consultant. And in fact, at the ILCA conference, there was a representative from La Leche League there congratulating them on the 40th anniversary, and someone also from the IBLCE doing the same. So it originated through the efforts of La Leche League International.
Yeah, and it's grown to be its own thing, obviously. And now there are IBCLCs around the world, and ILCA is the professional organization for IBCLCs. It's the International Lactation Consultant Association.
Right. And
And yeah, so
they
yeah,
also publish our journal, Journal of Human Lactation.
exactly. And because of COVID and everything, this felt to me like the first, like we're back, kind of
Mhm.
operating pretty normally.
Yes.
And for me, it was something I had never done before, which was I was an exhibitor with you and our Laugh to
Yes.
Learning.
Yes.
And so that was very different. We were very lucky. We had our friend Renee Fisher there to help us as well, because the level of saying hello to people was a bit much for me. I'm more of an introvert, I think. But you and Renee really handled it well. And so, yeah, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was wonderful because there were people there from all over the world.
Hmm.
And people approached me, for example, I've spoken internationally, excuse me, internationally for many years. And someone came to me who had heard me speak in Hong Kong in
Hmm.
2009. Someone came up to me, brought me a gift from Paris
Yeah.
because she was aware of my work. It was like a little thank you, like treat from Paris that I brought home with me. And so it was wonderful to see people. There was my hostess from my speaking trip to Australia
Hmm.
last February was there. And so it was just really wonderful to connect with people from everywhere.
Well, and it was so wonderful to see friends that we hadn't seen for so long, our
Yes,
colleagues.
correct.
And just a very enjoyable experience. Nancy is famous, and so sometimes people didn't recognize her, but as soon as she was like, "Oh, this is my book," they were like, "Oh my God!" So fangirling, a lot of that going on.
A lot of photos taken with people, which
A
was great.
lot of photos taken with people. Yeah. And we had a raffle. And so that was fun. We gave away a course and we gave away signed copies of Breastfeeding Answers and copies of the Pocket Guide. So yeah, it was just a really lovely experience. And
It
we
was
plan on doing
for me.
more in the
Yeah,
future.
for me, it was the first opportunity we had at an in-person event to really talk about what differentiates LACTA learning
Yeah.
from other course providers. And that was very satisfying. I enjoyed
Well, it
that.
was great because we would ask people, have you heard of Lacta Learning? And delightfully so, it was either, yes, I love you, or
Uh-huh.
no. But once we explained what we were doing, how we didn't think that endless PowerPoints were the answer, they were very much on board. And so it felt very validating that the work we're doing is
Yes.
important. So,
Yeah.
so
That's
that was
great.
great. Well, we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the sessions that we went to.
Mhm.
So let's start out with you. You went to a session with Kathy Kendall Tackett. So talk
Correct.
about that. What was that about?
Well, I love hearing Kathy Kendall Tackett speak because she not only is uh, she has a lot of obviously very important information to share in terms of studies and clinical information that we need, but she's also very funny,
Yeah,
and
she's a
really a
great
great
speaker.
speaker. She's a fantastic speaker.
Mhm.
And so I learned a lot at the session. There was some, she kind of started a place that I already knew. Her topic was the effect of breastfeeding on maternal mental health. And
Mhm.
so her profession is a health psychologist. So
Right.
that's really her area of expertise is how, health affects, the effects of health on psychology. And
Mhm.
so she was talking about, anxiety and stress. And we know from the research that breastfeeding, the hormones of breastfeeding, actually are very calming and they make motherhood less stressful. So that's like she and I wrote a book together, Breastfeeding Made Simple: 7 Natural Laws for Nursing Mothers. And we mentioned in that book, some of these facts. But what I learned from her that I didn't know was that there's substances in the body that are when we are under stress, they're released.
Mhm.
So pro-inflammatory cytokines is what
Yeah.
they're called. And what I didn't know is that these pro-inflammatory cytokines cross the blood-brain barrier. And
Yeah.
so since I learned about this originally, there's been research to show that that happens. And so, the importance of supporting breastfeeding, and helping new mothers take advantage of that.
Yeah, often if a mom is depressed or under having a lot of anxiety, breastfeeding, they'll say, "Oh, let's cut this out, and that will
Right.
make your life better."
Right, like if they don't breastfeed, that somehow they'll be under less stress. But the
Right.
fact of the matter is that
Hmm.
the physical effects of breastfeeding reduce stress, in
Yep.
our physiology. And so I think that's really important. And so we have to, there are some people who say, oh, you shouldn't be breastfeeding exclusively because you're not getting enough sleep, and sleep is important. But we need to learn how to balance,
Right.
breastfeeding and sleep and everything else, no, especially for women who are at risk or women
Yeah.
who undergo birth trauma.
I have had some clients that sleep was critical, and
Mhm,
so we scheduled it so they would do some pumping during the day, and then
mhm,
their partner or someone else could give a bottle,
mhm.
during that longer sleep stretch.
Right.
So there are ways that it can work. And it again, breastfeeding doesn't have to be tossed because
Mhm.
breastfeeding is actually protective.
Right. And
Yeah.
right. So we're learning more about how breastfeeding is protective and some of the physical dynamics around that.
Okay. You also went to a session with Claire. And
Claire
so,
Eden.
yeah.
And the session that I did on exclusive pumping, which we have a separate podcast about, I do mention the work of Claire Eden and her team in Georgia. And she was someone who talked about revolutionizing NICU practice.
Mm,
And her room was full to overflowing.
mhm.
And they looked at the research and they've come up with some pumping strategies for mothers with babies in the NICU, who are exclusively pumping, that actually make the process of initiating pumping less stressful and easier. So if you want to watch my exclusive pumping podcast, I'll go into that in more detail. But it was
Great.
really great to see Claire and a member of her team presenting about this revolutionary new approach to initiating pumping for babies in the NICU. So that's a great thing to learn more about.
Yeah, and so that is available as a podcast, All Things Breastfeeding, and also on our YouTube channel.
Right.
So check that out, Nancy's talk on exclusive pupping.
essentially, it's a way to sort of ease them up into the level of pumping over the first 5 days,
Yeah,
uh, which, is a lot more practical for many of these families.
exactly. Well, I went to a session with Larry Noble, and
Mhm,
he was talking about epigenetics and the microbiome, which is something that I have a talk on as well. And, for me, because I have a talk on it, I didn't learn anything new, but it's
mhm,
always when we start thinking about how breastfeeding and breast milk, both the act of breastfeeding, but also the milk itself, how they turn genes on or off. They
mhm.
don't change your genes, but they change your gene expression.
Right.
And just it's so critical. And it just feels like, people are like, oh, breastfeeding is a nice thing to do. And it's like, no, so much more. And then he talked about how it affects the microbiome and how it sets up us to have the right microbes and the right things in our gut so that our whole body's functioning properly
Mhm.
and setting it up for a lifelong, period of good health. So just such important information. It always, though, makes me feel like I need to shout from the rooftops. Like it's not just something nice to do. So
Not a
yeah,
lifestyle choice, it's a health choice.
exactly. It really is. And it affects your whole entire life. And
Mhm.
so you're really recovering from the lack of breast milk kind of for your whole life if you don't have it or you're compensating. So, so it was an important session. People were not familiar. There were
Mhm.
times when he was like, and does somebody know what this is? And I was like, but I was the only person. So it was really great to have someone else, in a large venue talking about the subject.
Yes.
All right. And then you also went to a session that you really enjoyed. And not that you didn't enjoy the other ones, but that you really felt connected to. And
Mhm.
that was by Gina
Weissman.
Weisman.
Yes, I met Gina when I spoke in Israel in 2016. I visited her clinic there. She's someone with a unique set of credentials. She's a dentist.
Hmm.
She's an IBCLC, and she's a Leche League leader.
Hmm.
And so she spends a lot of her time in her clinic evaluating babies for tongue tie and lip tie. And
Okay.
her session was on lip tie.
Hmm.
And I heard her speak before. She and I shared the podium at a conference in Athens, Greece,
Hmm.
back in 2018.
Hmm.
And she's a fantastic speaker. She's so excellent. And what I enjoyed, her focus on lip tie was interesting because there's
Yeah.
not a lot of research on it. And she did
Yeah.
go over research in the systematic reviews. But what I found most interesting was her experience as a dentist gives her the long-term picture. So
Hmm.
she showed us photographs of babies who had, what looked like possibly very severe lip ties. And she talked about some of the concerns around that. Like one of the concerns is space between the teeth. You
Right.
know,
Which is an aesthetic thing and also maybe a cavity thing.
right. And so she talked about that, and she basically, what I learned during that session was like what happens to that over the
Mhm.
period of growth between babyhood and adulthood. And
Right.
she showed examples of babies who had what looked like really severe, space-ish, like
Mhm.
the membrane there was
Yeah.
very
Wrapped around. Yeah.
prominent, and how over the period of the decades, it got smaller and smaller, that's a normal thing that happens. And
Hmm.
that for the vast majority of children who have this,
Hmm.
the teeth do not have space in between them. But then she also went into the aesthetic issue of those who do have spaces, and she
Hmm.
showed pictures of famous models who
Right.
actually, that was one of their distinguishing
Yeah.
features, and how that turned out to be a plus rather than a minus for them. So
Hmm.
even in cases where it did exist, it's not necessarily going to be a problem. And
Yeah.
so her philosophy, I learned about this, as I've known her over the years. In fact, I've I've used some of her photographs of tongue-tied revisions in Breastfeeding Answers. She uh, she's very cautious. I would say very conservative. And so she's what she has said in the past is, there's always something you can cut, but
Mhm.
she doesn't
Right.
want to be cutting anything if it's not necessary. And
Yeah.
so the advantage of her also being an IBCLC and having a clinic where IBCLCs work is that they can make sure that if a baby has either a tongue tie or a lip tie, they can rule out other interventions that might solve the problem, without necessarily doing a revision.
Mhm.
And so she said that, it's difficult with the research on lip tie because most of the studies that address lip tie, they've done both the tongue tie
Right.
and
And they do both. Yeah.
it's very hard to isolate who is the lip tie revision really helping.
Yeah.
And so she showed an image of someone, a baby who she did revise the lip tie. And during the question period, someone asked her, okay, well, when do you revise the lip tie?
Mhm.
And so she said essentially, and I'm sure this is probably true for tongue tie as well, if everything else has been tried, and let's say in the case where the tongue has been revised, but there's still problems, then she would consider
Mhm.
revising the frenula, the lip
The
frenula.
labial frenulum. Mhm.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that it was just all very interesting because she
It
said it
is. Yeah.
maybe like because she says she sees like 10 people a day with these
Mm,
issues. She says she's maybe revised two lip ties over the course of a year. So
mm,
how infrequently she revises lip ties. So I found that very, very interesting. As someone who obviously is in the field, we're doing this every single day.
yeah.
I really value her experience and her opinion.
Well, to me, in my area, again, as you say, if they do the tongue, they often just do the lip.
Right.
It's kind of like that a twofer.
Right.
A
And she said
twofer, haha.
she does not do that.
Right. And there has literally been one case in my years where a woman just had her baby's labial released, and she said it made a tremendous difference.
And I've known one person also
Yeah.
who
So
had
again,
tongue tie
never say
release, but then it was
never.
still, yeah. So
But how
so
many, yeah, how many unnecessary surgeries are we performing? And I think
right.
that's what's concerning to folks.
Right, right. And so I think you and I are both it, we're both of the mindset that we never say never.
Hmm.
And you always have to consider, all the possibilities. But yeah, the longer I go along and look at these things, the less I'm happy about just going ahead and doing, the cutting or the revising, if I'm not sure that there's a really good chance that it's going to make a difference.
Right. And so again, and first of all, Nancy and I are not experts on this particular
No,
subject.
no.
But yeah, I think that we tend to be more conservative, especially with the lip.
Right.
Um, is it necessary? The research really does not bear it out.
And I just
Yeah.
I made a speaking trip to New Zealand last February, and
Mhm.
they are actually are having an active effort there in terms of tongue ties to try to reduce because they got up to 11% of babies were getting tongue tie revisions in New
Wow.
Zealand, and we just decided there's something wrong with this picture, and
Right.
so they got much stricter about doing it, and I think they've got it down to about 3%,
Mhm.
which the research is usually between about 3 and 5%. So
Mhm.
yeah, so I think we are at a stage where maybe the pendulum is swinging back a little bit more towards the center. For a while it was like there was nobody would
Right.
touch it, and then
Right.
it was like everybody was doing it, and so I think we're maybe swinging back. And so lip tie is one of those areas that I think a lot of people have a lot of questions.
Yeah. Well, the last session that I went to was with Alyssa Schnell
Mhm.
on helping folks induce lactation
Mhm.
or relactate. And again, pretty familiar with the subject matter. I
Mhm.
think that the one thing that struck me is how much misinformation there still is about domperidone.
Mhm.
In America, in the United States, there are many people who still tell me it's illegal to use domperidone, and that is not the case. It's a matter of obtaining domperidone. And
Mhm.
so in the United States, we don't know the people who have the patent for it. don't produce it. So if one was going to get domperidone in the US, they have to go to a compound pharmacy and have it compounded. Well, that's not a big deal, except that breastfeeding is an off-label use. Increasing milk is an off-label use. And so the FDA is not, the FDA has said to the compound pharmacies, you're not supposed to create this for an off-label use.
Correct.
And
Correct.
so if one is going to obtain domperidone, it can be tricky if you live in the US.
That's strictly illegal, but the compounding pharmacies are
Right,
very
aren't
willing.
allowed to.
Right.
But there, it's funny because on the west side of my state, the compound pharmacies compound it all the time. And
Mhm.
so it's just interesting, but the ones in my area do not.
Mhm.
And so Alyssa does have a short little course that she's created called Hub, DOM Hub. And it just kind of gives you the facts about domperidone.
Which
And they
are important to know because there are people who should not take it.
absolutely, there are contraindications.
Right, right,
Especially anybody who has a history of heart issues.
right,
And,
cardiac
there are
issues.
possible side effects as well. And
Yes.
so it's not, again, not everybody, like,
Right.
not everybody should be taking
Right,
Paragon.
right,
But yeah, but then also really emphasizing what we know, which is the best way to make milk is frequent and effective milk removal.
correct.
And
Or
so I think we always want to
stimulation if you're
jump
just starting off
to,
and have no milk.
yeah, we want to jump to, oh, I'll take an herb, I'll take a pill.
Right, right.
Um,
Magic
just
pill.
like, you're having breastfeeding problems. Oh, let's release the frenulums, and that
Right,
we're
right,
looking for quick answers. And so, again, domperidone can be a tool. Herbs can be a tool, but they're not for everybody. And if you don't do the frequent effective milk removal through either hand expression or pumping, or best the baby at the breast, um, yeah, it's not going to go as well as it could.
right, correct.
So the other thing that we got to do, which was fun, which was not that the other things weren't fun, but this was, I think, especially fun, is so that you and I have been in conversations with Lisa Anders.
Mhm.
She is the person who was the lead author on the breast shield fitting um, article that came out last summer, 2024.
Flinch fit, yes,
Yeah. And so we got to have dinner with her, which was lovely, but also she had a poster about her
yes.
latest research. So
And her,
Nancy,
her poster session actually won the award for being the
it
most
did.
attendees. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, people really, because that's what we need. We need clinical things that are super helpful to help guide our process. So it's become again very popular that the idea that everyone needs smaller breast shields. It's
right.
very popular. And you and I both agree that some people absolutely do need smaller breast shields, and that's how they get the most milk. They're the most comfortable. But it's almost become like a religion that you have to have a smaller shield.
Right.
And so, what does Lisa's latest research say? Because she was the co-author on the article that kind of started this all.
Yeah, she was the lead author in the Journal of Human Lactation last year in 2024.
Mhm.
And so what she did is she did a survey of, it was just under, I think, 400 mothers who were pumping, I think exclusive pumping.
Right, exclusive
So
pumping.
these were exclusive pumpers. And what she discovered, she asked them about flange size and comfort and milk flow, milk production. And she discovered that there was really no connection between the size that they were using, their comfort, and their milk flow. And in fact, she found the larger sizes, the mothers actually seemed to be more satisfied with their milk production.
Mhm.
Although it was odd because like evidently they were more likely to have pain. I think it was on the left side, but not, or the right side, but not the left. It was one side, but not the other side,
Yeah,
which is odd.
yeah.
I suppose maybe not, sizes can be different on different breasts, obviously, but and so that was interesting. She herself, we had dinner with her and we talked about it. She's in the process of doing a study in a NICU right now.
Mhm.
It's going to be at least a year or two, I think, before that one's out. but she's very concerned about this sort of all or nothing mentality around flag sizes, and so she feels like we need more research. And in fact, I heard from her yesterday, and she said that they are this what was the poster session at ILCA has been submitted for publication, so we may see it, in the year ahead, which would be great.
Yeah.
Um, so.
Well, and as we've said, my colleague Jessica said this. She said, the work that was done by Lisa for the Journal of Human Lactation showed us that we needed to expand and open our minds to smaller sizes, not that we needed to banish larger sizes,
Right, right,
so that it's like it expanded our range of possibilities,
right.
but it's been interpreted that it limited. It just the pendulum, as you said, it
You
went from
have to go,
big.
you have to go smaller.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so, yeah, and there was another study this year, maybe we could
yeah,
put it in the notes,
hmm,
the link to that study, the Grid Neva study from
yeah,
Australia, where they looked at fit also and found no connection between flange fit, comfort, and milk production.
right.
So that's a published study. But so, we're sort of in the infancy of our understanding what role these small sizes play. Personally, I was doing a lot of work with mothers and flange fitting for
Right.
many years, and I've never been one to say, oh, everybody needs to go larger, which was the fashion for a while, or
Yeah.
everybody needs to go smaller. I think, for those of us who've been at it for many, many years and decades even, we know that one size does not fit all when it comes to anything, that we need to individualize our recommendations for
Absolutely. And
lactation
yeah,
parents.
at the Breastfeeding Center of Ann Arbor, our private practice, we've now expanded our choices,
Mhm.
but we just try them until the parent finds something that they feel like is the most comfortable and balance that with milk output.
Right. And
So,
and I
yeah,
I've heard like several people approached me at the ILCA conference and said, what do you think about these smaller sizes? I'm running into more and more mothers who are having nipple damage and
yeah,
they're having issues with milk flow because they've been told they need this smaller size and maybe it's not the right size for them. So,
right.
we have to, it's not just a matter of fitting somebody once. I mean, if somebody goes along and it's not working well, obviously we need to adjust.
Right. And, the people who are the original founder of this idea, she says you have to try them. But the problem is that people are now measuring and saying this is what, and they aren't being tried. And so the work is being misinterpreted and misused as well. So, yeah,
Very, very interesting. Yes.
interesting. Okay, well, Nancy, as it was quite an experience and it was wonderful to spend so much time with you and Renee at the conference, and we'll be doing it. We're going to be hopefully exhibiting at the Himbana. It's actually not their conference, it's the
No, it is. It's Human
oh,
Milk
it is Himbana
Consumption
conference.
North America. Yes.
Okay, so the Himbana conference, and that's going to be in April. So we'll be doing more of this, and people very much enjoyed the chocolate that we provided. So we had people coming back for more and more, and that was really nice.
Yeah. So we'll be at Himbana in 2026, April of 2026 in the Chicago area.
Exactly. All right. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for joining me for this.
My pleasure,
If
Barbara.
you have enjoyed this podcast, All Things Breastfeeding, if you could leave a review on your favorite podcast listening device, we would really appreciate it so it can move to the top and more people could find it. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.